Welcome, Jim. Jim Kilpatrick, it's honored to be interviewing you. It's great. It's great to have you on board.
That's good.
Jim's, I'm just going to read a quick bio. Jim's longtime Shots and Dykehead Caledonia Pipe Band member, beginning at age 15 under the leadership of Alex Duthert. That was your main band for many years, and you've done others since then. You won the drumming title at the World Pipe Band Championships 19 times, and with 15 of those as the lead tip, the main drummer, including a run of 11 consecutive times between 1988 and 1998. I hope I have that accurate. And that's a standing record, I believe.
Yeah.
In 1991, Shots won the drumming title in all 5 major championships, and that's a unique record. No one's matched that since. As a soloist, you've won the World Solo Drumming Championship a record 16 times, which is some incredible thing, untouchable. You ran, and currently, I guess you've been instructor at the Royal Conservatoire in Scotland, and you give master classes in drumming around the world. We're lucky to have you on, and welcome. So when did you start Highland drumming lessons? Well, how old were you? When did you you're a kid?
Yeah, I was a kid. I was between 9 and 10. I used to always say 10-year-old, but I'm sure it was before that. I'm sure it was between 9 and 10. And just a regular child living in a small town or a large village, whatever you want to call it. There was drumming in the family before, and we had lots of pipe bands and lots of flute bands, brass bands, kind of socially inspired bands in my town and also around all the other towns in the county and in the country, because it used to be that all the big companies like Steelworks and particularly the mining communities had pipe bands and brass bands where everybody paid a penny a week from their wages into the band. So anyway, that was that, and I started between 9 and 10. So
that's great. So there was it's actually a part of the community. You kind of grew up hearing it. Probably when you were inside your mom, you heard pipe band music going on. Is that true?
That's absolutely true. I went to World Pipe Band Championships and Cool Championships before I was even seen in real life. And never missed one. Never. Well, I can't say I never missed one. My mom never missed one. So
got you. So did you have drummers in the family?
Yeah, both my uncles played. My uncle Tom Brown, and my uncle Jim played in the flute band, and Tom played in the pipe band. And so that was in the family. So I was dragged along to every single pipe band competition, every Saturday, every Sunday, for years and years and years, up until I decided I wanted to start practicing and see what it was all about.
Did you get lessons from your uncles or from anyone in the family?
I did. Well, that's who taught me. My uncle Tom taught me. And Tom was the leading drummer of Balmoral and Badgate band, and all Tom's family plays drums as well successfully. So at that time, I just asked for lessons, and Tom used to take me up to his house in Whitburn and give me lessons, and that kind of started me off. And then after a while, I think, I don't know, months or something like that, I then went along to the pipe band which Tom played in, which was called Whitbrig Colliery at that time.
Okay.
It used to be Polkemic Colliery.
Okay.
One coal mine closed, another automatically took over the responsibility for sponsoring the band and helping finance it. So,
would you say most of the members of the band were miners?
No, there was a good few. Yeah, there was a good few, and at that time, everybody that played in the band lived literally a few miles from the band the band hall where it practiced. So it was really a local community.
Ah, that's great. That's good. That's good. And the Tom you're talking about, that was the uncle your first. Is he a Kilpatrick, or what's his last name?
He's a Brown, Tom Brown.
Tom Brown. Okay, good.
And my mother's maiden name is Margaret Brown. So Tom is the brother of my late mum.
Ah, good. I like hearing that, and I like that it was just a local band feeling. It was everything was local and family and community. So what a great way to start. It just was a natural for you to just go to do it, and completely supported. And I guess were there young friends that also drummed, learned to play drums?
At that time, I didn't have any friends. I just did it. I was kind of on my own, practicing at that time.
Yeah.
Of course, when you've been at the band for a little while, there's other learners there, so you made friends through time.
Yeah.
So I didn't go with a whole bunch of friends and say, "Oh, let's learn pipe band stuff on my own," and which was good because I think that kept me a little bit more focused because I knew that there was nothing else to compete with, nobody else to compete with. It was just something that I took on, and yeah, I enjoyed it. I loved it.
So you had let's say your first official lessons where you got, where you were getting serious when you were age 9, you say, about, or
Between 9 and 10.
9 and 10, and any lessons from that early time that stand out?
Well, something that there wasn't that much to do back then. There was the usual things. I mean, sport. Young kids played football a lot and all that sort of stuff, and the usual like street games, and so there wasn't anything near what there is for kids today. So learning drums was a big thing. It was exciting, and I was just totally focused on it, and I always, when I set out to do something, I always allowed myself to engage totally in that. So my two big loves when I was younger was snare drumming and football. I did a lot of sports at school, but I played a lot of football. I played for school teams and county teams, and that was a huge part of my life, to be honest. So drumming was a good. That was the only distraction. Drumming was a distraction, and football was a distraction to my drumming. So
I understand. It makes perfect sense. They go hand in hand. I like it. What challenged you the most when when you were first playing in your first band?
I think, well, when I was playing, by the time I played in the band, I didn't go into a juvenile band. They actually didn't have any juvenile bands at that time. Again, that's what it was. So I started playing in first grade when I was 12-year-old. So from starting around 10, I was, by the time I was age 12, I actually was competing in first grade against Al, funny enough. And so there wasn't a juvenile band, but the challenge for me, playing wise, was actually to get both hands to be as accurate as each other. So I'm right-handed, naturally right-handed, and so my challenge playing wise was to get my left hand and perfect it in the same way that my right hand was operating. The other challenge, there was no other social challenge, there was no other challenge on my time because, as I said, there wasn't a lot to do other than play football, and I did that a lot with my school friends. So that the challenge was just to keep focused and make sure I listened to what Tom Brown, my tutor, was saying, and to apply that. And because the good thing about how Tom taught was he never let you move from one rudiment, if you like, until you had perfected it enough that he knew that you were good enough to move on to the next stage. I think what happens more now than ever is I think young kids who start learning, they get, I don't want to say fast tracked, but it's kind of fast tracked in the sense that they are. I was 2 years before I, literally, just about 2 years before I was able to play in the band. Now you would have kids who are going for lessons, and you probably get them up in a matter of 3 or 4 months on a drum. They'd be playing in a band. Of course, you're learning much quicker now, and you're learning much more of many more rudiments than you did then. So it's like everything else. Everything progresses faster. You learn what it took you 10 years to learn. People are now learning in a year, 2 years. So
I hear you. It's a hard thing. It's actually, I know as a piper and a lot of students that are pushed quickly to get up into a band just because they're needed, and it hurts them. It gives them bad habits, and it's so much harder to unlearn the poor playing than it is to learn it correctly in the first place. Would you say it's along those lines, that when it's a fast track, it's maybe harmful?
there's only one way to do that. You either learn properly and at your own pace, and everybody learns at their own pace. You know, everybody's got, some people are faster learners than others, and the only way to undo that is go straight back to the beginning and start again.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to do that. You can't do that with kids, even though you want to do that. I see some kids, thankfully not many to be honest, but I do see some kids where I would like to say, you know something, you've got a great potential. Let's just stop, go back, and start again. And they would learn quicker. They'd just breeze through it.
Yeah.
But not only does it not do the kids themselves any real, it's no advantage for them. It's not doing them any good. It's also not doing the band any good, because they haven't properly matured. They haven't properly learned. I'm talking about matured in the musical sense, and they haven't learned the craft well enough to be playing in the band that they're playing in. And sometimes the band might be playing material that is probably a little bit more advanced than what they should be. So it's a double whammy. So it's not a criticism, it's just an observation.
Sure.
I totally get it. I totally understand why kids are fast tracked. Because you know something, if you don't embrace the talent and bring them and make them part of it, you'll lose them. They won't.
That's a good point. It's true.
We could hang around. I could hang around. There was nothing else to do. But now, if you say to a kid, it might be 2 years before you're going to even get that uniform on and get out there and play, they'll be going, okay, I'm going, I'm done. See you. It's true. A really special young person to actually hang on and learn the long way. There's a long way and a short way. So I get it, and I don't disagree with it. It's just an observation, but it's a necessity. I really do think it's a necessity, because you can't have kids that with so many other things and other interests just hanging on, hoping that they will get a game in a band. It's just not going to happen, and it's a shame.
Yeah.
But on saying that, there is some absolutely outstanding young kids that are out there playing, just unbelievably talented. So what am I saying? It hasn't done us any harm. In Scotland in particular, we've got some brilliant kids, brilliant youth bands, brilliant school bands, juvenile bands, and some brilliant players within there. So anyway, so what am I saying? They're doing something right, and they're doing a lot right. So
I've got you. What would you say that leads into What's a common thing that beginning pipe band drummers deal with?
In terms of their playing is, I think one of the biggest challenges was one of the challenges that I had was to actually get both hands going in terms of the playing side, is to get both hands going equally as well.
Okay.
Everybody's going to have a strong hand and a weak hand, and I think the goal is not to have a weak hand, is to try and make your weak hand stronger. And I'm never a great believer in you've got to do it twice as much work with your weak hand as you do with your strong hand. I think you just need to do equal work, but focus on how everything feels with for instance, your right hand. Whatever you're doing, however that feels, and however you play and however it sounds, you've got to capture everything to be exactly the same. And that way you're going to play evenly and with control. And I think also there's a temptation for some young people to try and play as fast as they can, and I get that too. I did that. I was taught to try it. You're taught when you're playing drums, you're taught slowly, and you're taught to play faster as you gain more experience. So the game itself encourages you to get faster and get faster and faster. But I do think there's a point where you need to use your the talent that you get and obtain from playing fast and just condense it into playing more controlled. So it's a challenge, and some things you're good at, some things you're not. I used to always have a thing where I always practice. I practice way too much, but I always used to concentrate on practicing the things that I was least good at, or the things that I had more problems actually controlling. So I think I practiced quite wisely, and practice the things that I needed to work on. When you're teaching somebody, you need to work on this, and if I was told to work on something, that's what I worked on.
So at a certain point, I don't know how old you were, you joined Shots, and Alex Duthert was there. And what are some memories you have of working with him? Did it change your playing?
It changed my life. It changed my playing, of course. It did. It certainly did. It gave me all the opportunities that you could ever dream of. So it all started when I was, I would just be, I would be 15, early doors, and I wanted to join Shots, and I went up to Alec at a competition, and I said I would love to join the band. And he said, well, if you want to join the drum corps, get yourself up. And so that's what I did. And that was just it was just a whirlwind, to be honest with you. One week I was practicing and playing with Pokemon, and the other week I was sitting in the Shots band hall in the toilets where the drum corps practiced at that time, and that was it. And we had all these really famous, iconic drummers that were sitting around the table, and Alec at the head of the table. So it certainly changed my life in more ways that I can say, and gave me and I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be the player that I am today.
I knew he had a strong influence from Swiss drumming, and did you notice a change in his style in the years you were there, or was he already innovative when you joined?
He was already innovative. I joined in 1973, so Alec had been going over to the USA, and he'd been doing some work, done lots of workshops then, but he met a lot of the top DCI drummers, or at that time it would be fife and drum drummers. He also travelled when he was in Switzerland. He met Dr. Fritz Berger, who is the drummer who kind of brought the Swiss drumming to the forefront, if you like. And, not that it needed to come to the forefront, because it was always there, but everybody at that time, you know, the all the different styles, it seemed like they all were involved in what they did themselves, embedded in their own culture, within their own country, etc. And that includes Scottish pipe band drumming. Then with Alec travelling so much and meeting so many different influential drummers, of course everybody shares. Drummers share everything, and he would come back to Scotland with all the different types of movements, different types of rudiments, and then he would incorporate them and introduce them into pipe band snare drumming. So I think that there was a time when I would say that Alec broke the ice was probably around 1979, 1970.
Wow.
Where he introduced his latest salute to Max Abrams, the famous Alec Duffert drum salute. And he introduced some Swiss drumming and backsticking, which he brought back from the USA. So I think that was around the time, I don't want to be quoted as being accurate on that, but I think it was around that time when then I would say where Alec broke the ice and really started to implement some of these other worldly sounds and rudimental phrases, and that was it. And he was always influential, and it was like non-stop from there on. He was just so innovative with everything. He led all the time. Everybody followed. I always looked at it as everybody's following this, and not because I was in the corps, but just everything that Alec did. He was, for me, the only one that really took it by the scruff of the neck and wasn't afraid to play outside the box. Not to say that there wasn't other fantastic leading drummers. There was, but Alec seemed to be the one that led the way, and I think everybody else will agree with that.
Oh, it's great. It's great to hear the strong influence for you, and you feel that when he's the way that he was the instructor and lead tip, did he teach you how to teach?
Do you teach anybody how to teach? I think you learn how to teach by paying attention to the things that work for you, and you see that's working for everybody else. There's two things about teaching. One is you know what works, and you know what to teach and how to teach, but you also need to know what doesn't work and how not to teach. So Alec taught by example. People used to say, Alec never ever gave me a lesson. He never gave anybody a lesson. He didn't. That's true. He didn't actually out and out teach anybody, apart from maybe Drew and Johnny's two sons and that, and Alistair. But he never gave me a single lesson, and I never seen him. I never was aware of seeing Alec or watching Alec giving anybody a lesson. He taught people outside the corps because he was a teacher, but I'm talking about if you were for instance, part of the corps from my side, you learned everything by just being in the same room as Alec, and that taught me to focus, pay attention, remember everything. I would just be sitting on every single word that Alec said, and then I would apply that. I would implement everything that he said. So he never ever said, he would say, this is how you've got to do it, but you wouldn't stop and say, okay, let's make sure that you're doing this right. It was up to every individual. It was their job to make sure that we're doing it right. So I think it's true, and I kind of did the same when I was leading drummer. I don't think a leading drummer is there to teach all the players what to play and how to play, but it's not their job to teach them how to play drums. I know it kind of is the same thing, but it is different. You either could do it or you couldn't do it, and if you couldn't do it, it was simple. You weren't going to be there.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think the best teachers are the people who teach by example, and the best learners are the ones that actually pick up all the positive points and things from whoever their heroes are.
Makes sense. So when you'd head to the big championships, would it just be work as usual? It just same feeling. You're a core, and you just get into it, and there's no difference whether you're playing at a small games or at the Worlds.
Same thing. Small games. You're something when you're competing. It's a competition. There's nobody goes into a competition thinking I don't need to play as well today because it's not so important. Every single time you strap on a drum or hook on a drum, every time you hook that drum on, whether it's it's just as important having the same attitude towards practice as it is to competing. Competing, all you're doing is you practice the same thing hundreds and hundreds of times. When you compete, that's just you're more under the microscope, and somebody has an opinion of how they think you played. But for the individual, it's the same. It's 100%. I as a leading drummer, I think all my guys will agree with this. I didn't like to see anybody that I thought wasn't given 110%. It was 100% or nothing.
What World Pipe Band Drumming Championship do you remember the best? Both as a band and solo.
Well, as a band, actually out of all the world championships that I won drumming, as a band, my first win, and that was in 1973. It was in Damp. I don't think I could tell you many of the parks that we played in. I do remember that one. It's embedded. 1973, and it was the first. It was my first competition ever with shots. At that time, I had left Polkemmet probably a couple of months before, 2 or 3 months before, and my registration. Then you had to be registered with the band. Or your registration you had to register it, and it had to be back with the band secretary before the time that you played on the championship. So if we were playing at 3 o'clock, as long as that registration came in before 3 o'clock, you were eligible to play. So anyway, the secretary or somebody said that day. Well, Alex said, "Well, Jim, you can't play. Your registration's not in." And I didn't expect to play anyway. I was 15. I was still on cloud nine, just being part of the group, the drum corps. So I went away. It's a long story, but I'll shorten it. I walked around the park, met a few people, sat around, and then sauntered back to the band bus to have a listen to the corps practicing. And then Alex seen me in the background. And he just went over and just bawled at me. He says, "Right," he says, "get your drum, you're on." He says, "Where's your drum?" I says, "It's in the bus." He says, "Get your drum, get it on, you're playing." Like I was playing in 15 minutes or something like that. So I had like one kind of half-baked run through with the core. That's what Alec was like. That's what he did. You were either in or you were not in, and that was it. I put I had my school blazer on and my kilt up to here with and I went on and we played in the March to Spain Rail. And we played no, I think it was just a medley. Then we played. It was a medley, and that was it. We went on and we won as a band. We also won as a drum corps. So it was a double whammy. And I have to say that my best drumming, most memorable one, has to be that one as well. It's always your first championship.
Yeah.
I actually used to say the best win was my last win, and that's very. But the most memorable one was for me in the Worlds was 1973, and we also won drum major as well, so we got the triple, and that was it. That was just a fantastic experience.
So change gears a little bit. We have lots of discussion recent years about midsections. Where do you see the role of midsections going in the future?
Well, midsections have there's one part of the band that has gone from here to here. I would say it's the bass and tenor drummers, the midsections as we now call them, and I think they've got a great future. I think they've got a huge part. They have been playing a huge part in pipe bands for several years now. When I played in Shots, we played 2 tenor drummers. When I took over Pokemon, we had 2 tenor drummers. When I went back to Shots as lead drummer, we had 2 tenor drummers. And then I introduced a 3rd tenor drummer. And some people were going, wow, that's brave. That's 3 tenor drummers. Then I introduced 4. And then I introduced 5. And I kept, when I say the first to play 3 tenor drummers and 4 tenor drummers, I'm sure somebody throughout the world will go, no, hold on a second. We played 69 or whatever. And so for that, I apologise. But on mainstream first grade, top of the first grade, I was never afraid. I always thought the tenor section, the tenor drummers had so much more to offer. At that time, not so much visually, because I wasn't so concerned about the visual aspect. I was 100% focused on the sound and the playing and what they could bring to the rhythmic flow of the drum scores that I was writing at that time. So I ended up, I had 5, then I had 6, then I had 7 tenor drummers, and people were going, oh my God, that's crazy, you can't play anymore. You don't need any more than 4 tenor drummers. And then I played 8 tenor drummers, and then my last season with the Spirit in Scotland, I played 9 tenor drummers and a bass drummer. So like one for every note in the chanter type of thing. So
were they tuned that way? They were tuned to.
Yeah, they were tuned. They were literally tuned.
But not to 9 notes.
Every drum had its own specific note that was tuned to a note on the chanter. What? So the problem that you might find there is everybody wants to play at the one time, and that's. And I remember a couple of people, probably not that knowledgeable on how we were doing things, said, "Hi, most of your tenor drummers are never playing." Yeah, of course, that's because pipers don't play 9 notes at the same time.
Yeah.
So exactly. But it allowed us to play like almost chord systems, as you say, doing that, and it's how you use it. So I think in the future I see that, and it's the important thing is when you've got all these tenor drummers. And by the way, a band with 5 tenor drummers can be just as effective as a band with 9 tenor drummers. I'm not saying 9 tenor drummers is a necessity, because it's definitely not. And neither is 8, probably neither is 7 either, but it's how you use it. So if you've got them, you need to box cleverly and use them wisely. and a lot of it is all down to the tuning. Tuning is key to the midsection, from the bass drum to the lowest, from the lowest drum to the bass drum to the highest tenor drum, 14-inch tenor drum, and you've got to keep in mind that it's now not only a rhythmical instrument, it's also a rhythmical stroke melodic instrument. So you're going to have to tune your drums properly. So tuning is key. If you have a drum that discords with a note on the chanter that's getting played, and that, for instance, just imagine that, and I've heard it, that drum is being played, just grinding against it, and so every time that note's played and the tenor drummer strikes the drum, it's going to sound it's going to stand out. It's going to stand out like a sore thumb. So, and then it will start to, you'll hear it and you'll start focusing on it. So from that aspect, I think tenor drummers are doing, I think they're doing a great job. They can really enhance the drum score. They can enhance the melodic pattern of whatever the tune is, and they can bring a lot more. It's just bringing so many different dimensions to the drum corps and the band performance. So and it just adds great exciting layers to the overall impact of what's going on. So I think the future is great for midsections, and but again, there's just important things to focus on and remember is tuning is key. Understanding the volumes and the weights that you've got, and using it wisely as a proper musical stroke rhythmical instrument, and doing that, because if it's not, as much as it can enhance the performance and the overall and give you great impact, it can also destroy it just as easily. It can destroy the whole thing if it's too busy. If it's, I think one of the strangest things is if I hear a band with lots of tenor drummers and I'm not hearing any tenor drumming, I'm not hearing anything. So it's the opposite side. So my thought then is, well, I have 7 or 8 tenor drums when you're only effectively using 3 or 4 of them. So again, not a criticism. It's just it's my vision of what I see. I always maintain that you don't need to use everything you've got, but if you've got it, you've got to use it sometime, and use it effectively and wisely.
We have a problem in this country. I've heard it might be true in Scotland as well, and maybe other places, of getting drummers for pipe bands. Do you know why that is?
Wow. Well, you know something, I'm not sure there's a huge problem in Scotland.
Okay.
Getting drummers to bands. Well, first of all, to get drummers to bands, you're gonna attract you'll attract every age group, but hopefully you'll attract as many youngsters as you do other ages.
Sure. Okay?
Adults. And because I think the future, if you can keep them, the future is, for pipe bands, is in the youth. And that's one of the things that has, not to get off the subject, but that's one of the things that I know a lot of people have been speaking about and are quite concerned following what's happened with the COVID-19 pandemic, is the bands haven't been together, kids haven't been as active as they were before things closed down. By not being so active, are they going to be there when we all go back? Are adults going to be there when we all go back? We don't know, and we won't know until everything unwinds and everything starts to get back to normal. So I don't want to talk about that because we don't know, but it's a concern. So I think one of the things for everybody, but particularly kids, you've got a band has got to create a route that allows anybody that wants to join to get to the band. Okay. Now that route, when I'm talking about, they've got to create a route. They've got to create a route through being visible. People have got to know the band's there. You can't have a band, whether it's a competition band or whether it's a social band or whether it's a band that does some of both. That route has to exist that allows, particularly kids. Now, when I say particularly kids, I mean because adults can more easily get up and go to a band and try and suss it out to see if that's what they want to do, and they can be up and running players, or they can be complete beginners. But the kids have less responsibility in their lives, and I'm not trying to diminish their what they're doing, but adults have much more responsibility in life than kids. Kids can go there, they can enjoy it, it's a hobby.
Yeah.
So everybody has to see the band as being something that, whether it's a social thing or whether it's a competitive, of a competitive nature, they've got to see the band as being something that's worthwhile doing. They've got to feel that they are part of the band. When you get there, it's one thing, you can get people to the band. I know lots of people who went to bands and stuck it for 2 or 3 months and came away, and I'm saying, well, what happened? They just said, well, they just not care. They're not interested. Yeah. They don't care. I don't want to say that the Pipers don't care too much about what's happening at the back end. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's the reverse. So it's not a blame thing. But bands have got to make it. Bands have got to make their. It's got to be social. There's got to be socially accepted. There's got to be socially acceptance for everybody. If kids feel that they are making up numbers and they're not actually part of the system, I'm not going to stick. It's getting a little bit deep because you're getting into loads of different people's feelings and what the priority is and whatnot. So you've got to make it exciting, and you've got to make it something that quickly becomes part of their life. If it doesn't become part of their life, they will try it and they'll walk away. Okay. And you know as well as I do, once that pipe band starts flowing through your blood, it's part of your life. Okay. I mean, we always say it's life. There's nothing more important than the pipe band, and when it's in your blood, that can actually happen. It was with me. There was pipe bands were flowing through my blood. Nothing else mattered, and nothing would ever come between me and playing drums or playing in a pipe band. Yeah. So, however, if the band make it all about just going out and it's all about show and there's no thought, say there's no thought from the pipe major, and I'm not pointing any fingers, but say there's no thought from the piping side towards the drummers, they're just there because they're there. That's not the way to do it, because they're very quickly going to feel disjointed, and they don't know why they don't want to do it. They just know they don't want to do it. Take, for instance, the school bands in Scotland and all over the world. I had school bands, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, America, everywhere. You take all the school bands that get an established program within the network and so they're building it into the educational system. I remember years when for some of the school bands, they would start a band up, and some of the kids wouldn't be seen dead in a kilt.
Sure.
They didn't want to be wearing a kilt. They don't want to be wearing. I'm not wearing a uniform. I'm not wearing a kilt. I might want to play in the band, but I'm not wearing a kilt. And then but after a while, that band starts to grow and not grow just with each other, but grow within the community, grow within the school. So all of a sudden, everybody's proud of their kids and their relatives and their friends, and they're maybe a little bit jealous, I don't know. And then these kids are now traveling all over. We get school bands from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, America, coming over to Scotland, not only to compete, but they come over and they travel the country. They just take in the culture. They learn so much.
Beautiful.
And our local band, the Lanarkshire Schools pipe band, they started travelling abroad. They went to New York to play for Tartan Day a couple of years ago. Some of these kids had never been. I was in the school doing the SQA examinations, because that's another thing we have. We actually bring the music exams. You can play pipe band snare drum as part of your music exam.
It's good.
So some of these, and the teachers were saying, Jim, some of these kids, they haven't even been outside their county.
Yeah.
And now they're going to be on an aeroplane and they're going to be in New York in a week's time. And then I've seen that, and the parents were going, now, all of a sudden, everybody wants to play in the pipe band.
Yeah.
The pipe band is the rock stars. They're literally rock stars within some of these school bands. So that's part of the route. So the route is it's a long route. You got to create the route, and when you have that route to get people to join, you've got to make that a good experience. And if you start dissecting people or groups within a band, then it's not going anywhere. I've seen it happen, and that's my theory on that. It was a bit deep.
I think it's good. Well, certainly when you were a boy, there wasn't much going on, and that was the highlight and a heartbeat of the town. The pipe band. You had sports and you had the pipe band, so that was what you wanted to do. It was what you're talking about is making it a community and a part of the community. You have a way and goals and a thing to do that's enjoyable for everyone. I like what you're saying, and I understand what you mean by having a route.
Yeah, that's important. I mean, when I started up, I kind of laugh now if I see a band and there's several people following the band in the public streets, and I was that kid, right behind the band, in step, marching along with the band. It didn't matter whether it was a pipe band, brass band, flute band, whatever kind of band. If they were out on a parade for any kind of event, I was the first. I closed shoes on, and I just ran and I just joined. I was that young kid marching behind the band. It was just part of the life. So it's a big community thing. But things have changed, and that's why it's more important to embrace everybody that comes in to the band and give them some sense of purpose, and make that whole thing. You've got to be part of make it an experience, but make them part of the experience that everybody's feeling in the band. As soon as that goes away, that route has been closed off.
Okay. When did you begin teaching online? That's the way now.
That's the way. how things have changed. You know, the world has changed. Has the world changed? My God, uh, it has. And I don't know for the worse or for the better. I actually
Ah,
think I think for the better.
ah,
I because now you have a choice. I I didn't like teaching when it was all on old systems and on dated technology. And I know the technology at the time was modern, but it wasn't great. So Skype, for instance, it was good, but there was lots of lags when you were playing. It was difficult to actually teach one on one and actually teach by example, by showing. Now all the meeting platforms are generally pretty secure
yeah,
and really really good, and that's only going to get better. That's going to get better. That's the future for all these meeting platforms is going to be great. So I probably started teaching about 10 years ago. I before that I didn't. I neither had the time nor the inclination to teach online. I would rather teach one on one. But on that, a lot of my teaching was done abroad, out of Scotland. So most of my workshops and masterclasses would be in Canada, the States,
ah,
Australia, New Zealand, and so I think I did enough of that I was quite content and more than busy. To be honest with you, it was crazy. I went through some years of not being able to say no, and that can be a problem because you everything just banks up and you're left with no you time or me time. And so much as it's great to travel, I think the online teaching future, or the future of online teaching, is going to be really part and parcel of how we move forward. Um, Maybe there's not as much enthusiasm for people traveling. Traveling is going to get more expensive. Traveling is going
ah,
to no, it's not going to get. I never found traveling easy. I found sitting on an aeroplane easy because that was the easy part.
yeah,
But I've always found the traveling part of it and everything else connected to it. And now we're in a, this Brexit thing, which I could spit blood when I
yeah,
hear that name. And for any part of Europe, we've got to get certificates and visas for every single country that we go into. So traveling is not going to get any easier. I think transatlantic is going to be the same, but so I think people will start to embrace online teaching. They already have.
yeah.
They haven't had a choice.
So
Um,
you see some advantages maybe to online. You see any advantages to online instruction?
For sure. Well, one of the advantages is you can if there's a workshop, for instance, in Pittsburgh or anywhere in the States, unless you lived within a reasonable distance, short flight or a long drive, but if you were from another country, it was near impossible for you to attend that workshop or get lessons from that particular instructor. Now online, it doesn't matter where you are. You can be the other end of the world, and you can have the same opportunity as if you were sitting in a living room or office or practice room studio with that instructor. And I think that's one of the huge advantages of online. I think now people, players, pipers, and drummers can choose what workshop they would like to attend, and with whatever tutor they wanted to get lessons from, and that without spending tons and tons of money, and also for the workshop themselves to spend tons and tons of money, bringing the teachers and the tutors in, paying them
Oh,
and housing them and feeding them and and everything else that goes along with that. and that's a huge undertaking, and it's a risk, because if it doesn't work right, you can end up losing a ton of money. So
It's true. Well, that's kind of answering my next question, is what you might say to a prospective drumming student who's on the fence about whether or not to study drumming online. I think you've answered some of that.
yeah, well, first of all, don't be frightened, don't be scared of it, embrace it, and just focus on the advantage. And the advantage is that although you're online, it's still very much one-on-one, and you still get the atmosphere, and you still get the excitement of being with that one person on that particular lesson, or if it's a group lesson, you can still get that. I've done lots of master classes on Zoom, and then it's a whole new experience. But you actually start to let people get closer to you on the screen, and I think it's a way. Don't, for anybody thinking about doing it and thinking it's not the same experience. Of course, it's not the same experience, but it's a different experience.
Yeah.
And some people might like it better. Some people might. Some kids might not like being in a crowd. I tell you one thing that happens in a classroom situation. If I have 12 or 20 students or 5 students, it doesn't matter. At some point, I'm going to point to somebody and say, play this for me. I want to hear you playing it. Now, that's quite brutal for that person. It can be quite brutal for that person, and it puts them under a microscope. And I've seen it. And one thing that I've learned about working online and remotely, remotely online and in person, is you don't seem to make anybody feel uneasy when you're online, when you're on a Zoom lesson. You're still, there is that distance, so that's an advantage, and not that nobody would want anybody to feel uneasy, but sometimes I've asked students to play, and right away I go, oh man, so you change your tactic. You're like you're in mid sentence and you start changing it all around. So yeah, I'm babbling on about that, but there's loads of good reasons. The best reason is it's there, it's available, it's instant, it's cheaper, and you can embrace it as much as you can embrace a one-on-one lesson.
It's good.
I don't think one-on-one. I don't think the days for instructors traveling around the world has ended. I hope not. Certainly not. But I think in addition to that, I think there will be. For instance, I think, and you guys have been brilliant. You're like an institution for piping and drumming schools now for years and years and years. So and I think you've got a great advantage, because it's again, you create the route for the people to come to your online workshops, and that's great. I see organised workshops in a specific country or area continuing with a backup online, maybe in the winter or something like that. So that's what I see. I think you can double up. I think it'd be great for workshops to have the workshop, as long as everything works properly and people attend and it's affordable. And then having a booster workshop, maybe when the weather's not great for traveling and whatnot, and people can attend online. And having met the instructor face to face, it also makes everybody feel much more at ease as well.
Good points. It's they complement each other. So, and finally, what are you looking forward to being a part of the Balmoral School summer session?
I'm looking forward to meeting and teaching a lot of students that I otherwise wouldn't have had the chance to engage with and instruct. So the one thing about the Balmoral setup is you guys have been doing it for, it's an institution now in piping and drumming. So you guys have been doing it well for so many years. So I'm excited to be part of a great setup. And I know that whatever you do, you'll be doing it properly. And I know that everybody involved will be treated great. I'm talking about the students, with the right information, the right follow-ups, the right advice, and all that sort of stuff. And so definitely looking forward to teaching different people that I haven't so far been teaching.
That's great. It's
workshops. A lot of the same people come back.
yeah.
So online, you do get a vast array of different drummers in your class. So that's from different parts of the world. That's the interesting thing as well. It's not all because it's held in the USA. It's everywhere. So I'm hoping people from all around the world who be part of it just signs up and gives it a go.
Well, it's great. It's going to be wonderful to have you in the school as an instructor, and you're welcome. And anything you need, let us know. And look forward to seeing you again in the summertime. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Richmond. I'm looking forward to it. Take it easy. Cheers.